Converted Man here. So JMDapologetics101 has this terrific video complaining about Aronra going off on this guy that asks a question. So I can't play the video with audio that you guys, gals, and robots will be able to see it. So the link to that video is in the description. You can check it out. Come back, then listen to the rest of this. Unless you're here live, then don't do that. So the question that the guy asked, I'll address this first. He asks Aaron, in the 20 years that you've been exploring the topic of religion, you haven't found evidence for Christianity. Now Aaron stops him right there and says, no, that's not what I've said, because the question preassumes certain things, and Aaron has to correct the questioner what the actual thing he has said is, because he can't answer the question when the question itself is malformed. That it's a loaded question, essentially. So Aaron corrects him in saying that faith is a belief without evidence. And it's so funny because I just did a video covering that a second time after covering it already. If you have faith, you don't have evidence. You don't have facts. You don't. Otherwise, you wouldn't need the word faith. Now, you can equivocate the word faith all you want and try to make it mean whatever the belief you want. And this is what apologetics is good at, especially Christian apologetics. They'll use perhaps the Bible verse that says, now faith is the evidence of things unseen and the hope for whatever the belief that thing says. I can't remember it verbatim offhand, but they'll use that or whatever. They'll say, well, no. Faith isn't blind faith. It's trust. Okay, trust based on what? And when you finally get to the meat of it, it's really what's the evidence? That's all. That's all Aaron is asking for. That's all atheists / skeptics that I have encountered, with a few exceptions, have asked for. And again, I can't really speak of them. I can only speak for myself. There has not been a moment during my time on YouTube or before I got on YouTube where anybody proposing anything about any god has given evidence for that claim. And by evidence, now Aaron means scientific evidence. For me, it's either scientific evidence or at least give me a logical argument. Aaron doesn't include that in his preferred methodology of, and if you had scientific evidence of God, then it wouldn't be the Christian concept of God, at least not the one that's the most popular version, because God would then be natural. God has to be natural to be studied and found by science. So you can't. My link doesn't work though. Really? Oh, okay. Let me fix that real quick. You can't. What was I saying? Dang it, stupid chat, distracting brain. Not you. You're not stupid. The one that chatted the chat. Whatever. My brain is stuck. So okay, if there is scientific evidence for God, any God, that God would be within the realm of science. It would be a natural God. Christianity asserts that God is not natural. Therefore, God of the Christians could not ever be found in science. You couldn't have evidence of it. End of story. It wouldn't ever exist in that paradigm. If you found evidence of God, it would not be Yahweh. It wouldn't be the Christian God. It would be a different God. Or maybe it would be named Yahweh, and it would be that Christians have just been mistaken about God for quite some time. Okay, so what Aaron says there is true. I know it's true. I'm pretty sure it's true that he hasn't seen any scientific evidence for the Christian God. Okay, I got to watch a little bit of the video to. Yeah, I should actually do this as a recorded video response, but I'm not doing that right now. So, if you want like a more in-depth analysis of that, I'll do it, later. But I'm doing this live. I'm doing it live. Okay, so Aaron reiterates that faith is a belief without evidence. Because if you have facts, you don't need faith. If you have evidence, you don't need faith. You don't need to use that word. Now, again, people like to mess with what that word means or what they think it means or whatever. It's like, look, then just use a different word then. If some other word is better than faith, then just use that. Don't use the word faith. But of course, then you'd have to rewrite the Bible, so that's a problem. And then Aaron continues to answer the actual question that should have been asked, which is, you've said you haven't seen this, evidence where you, and he's explaining that he's looking for scientific evidence. And then he says, I'll take anything that qualifies as evidence. And by that, I think he means scientific evidence, but because he's already said scientific evidence. Now, on screen, JMD then shows a bunch of different arguments, different screenshots of different arguments, playlists of those arguments. Arguments, in and of themselves, and I've said this before, but I guess I'll have to say it again, are not evidence. The premises might indeed contain evidence, but then you don't even need the argument. If I say, look, I have a blue stuffed sheep, all I have to do is show you that I have a blue stuffed sheep, and there you go. That's it. We're done. I don't need an argument about it because I just show you the empirical evidence, the visible evidence. Now, maybe you'll say, well, you need to prove that you own it or whatever, you can get technical like that. But nonetheless, here it is, and I can show you it. I can't show you it right now because I don't have a webcam, but I can show you that I at least have it in my possession. Maybe I don't technically own it, maybe I'm borrowing it, whatever, but I'm holding it. I can show you that. So these arguments have different premises in them. And the problem with all of these arguments is that one or more of those premises is logically flawed. From a logician point of view, and I consider myself an amateur logician now. Maybe you think of me better than that. I don't know. I try to stay humble with how I view myself in that because I know that I could always learn more about logic. Uh, is that when you have a argument that has one or more logical fallacies, you have to be skeptical of the conclusion. I've said that many times. Um, a video series that I really love that's out there uh, has Star Trek characters talking about different logical fallacies, and the one they just did was the fallacy fallacy. And somebody had complained, like, this thing just seems to ruin the whole point that if you have a bad argument and then you say, well, the conclusion is wrong, that in and of itself is a fallacy. And it's like, well, what's the point then? And I explained, I said, look, if my argument is the following: premise one, lobsters exist or my car is not clean. Premise two, Pikachu is on my computer. Conclusion, my light is on. Now, the conclusion, independent of all that, because that's full of a mess right there, and bonus internet points if you can point out all the logical fallacies, and extra bonus points if you can point out all the formal fallacies I had with that particular argument. The conclusion is on its own true or false, independent of the argument. But the point of doing logical analysis is to save you time and energy from investigating further into the matter. You hold the conclusion in suspense. It might be true, it might not, but you have no compelling logical reason to pursue it. So you're skeptical of it. Doesn't mean you think it's false, doesn't mean you think it's true, it's just you're skeptical about it. You're like, I'll just wait for somebody to give me a better argument. Now, that's the logician's problem with every single argument that's on the screen, and I'll name them off. The teleological argument, the resurrection of Jesus, the ontological argument, the reliability of the New Testament, the quantum God, the cosmological argument, God, morality, and ethics. And that appears at 38 time 0:38 timestamp in video. This will be much better when I actually edit it, but you get to like see the process of me deconstructing things live here because maybe I'll get more views. I don't know. Okay, so the scientific problem with those arguments depends, of course, on the argument. So the teleological argument has absolutely no scientific evidence at all that supports anything in it. Period. End of story. There's no science within that particular argument. None. Zero. And I'd challenge anyone to show me that I'm incorrect, that it has any scientific anything. It does, if it's the one I'm thinking of, it does, okay, we've got the refuting weak anthropic principle. So I'm thinking that among that playlist is the argument that life is very rare and things like that. But all of that, although it contains scientific ideas, is wrong in the conclusions that it draws from those scientific ideas. The conclusions in and of themselves are not scientific. Otherwise, science would declare that God exists, and it hasn't. So, no. I was actually thinking that might have been a different argument when I first saw it, but nonetheless. Okay, resurrection of Jesus. Certainly not scientific. History is not something that you can perform science on to some degree, but you do at least have archaeology. Well, what archaeological evidence would Jesus leave behind? That's the question I don't know the answer to, but any evidence of that person or people or whatever is just, it's probably gone by now and there's nothing there, archaeologically speaking. You could prove that the places probably existed, and then you could look at the text itself and say, well, it references certain people. Were those people where they claim that they were at the time? And people have done this deconstruction of the timeline of Jesus's supposed birth and death, the two most important parts of a person's life, and shown that the claims made in the text of the Bible do not line up with what we know about history outside of the Bible. So there's all sorts of problems in the timeline of Jesus. Thus, that's a problem in and of itself, scientifically speaking. It might be that they just got it wrong, but then, well, what else did they get wrong? And also, of course, somebody coming back from the dead, beep, 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 this just in, is not scientific. In the sense that they want it to be. Because, yes, people have been declared dead and then they're not dead. But what dead is somewhat debated in medical science and such. Is it brain death? Is it heart death? Is it this? What is death? And the rebuttal there, you can say, well, Jesus, there's a swoon theory that Jesus, yeah, he was hurt, but he wasn't killed. He just faked it so they'd take him down before he died. but he supposedly suffers all these extra injuries. Uh, and it's interesting how Jesus getting stabbed with a spear and leaking out water is, later on introduced in one of the Gospels. And I think, if I remember right, it's not in the earlier Gospel. So it's almost as if the issue came up before and people were like, yeah, let's add that in so that we could say, no, 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 he was really dead. Because water coming out of you usually means something went terribly wrong inside of you. But maybe Jesus is the first mutant and he's basically Wolverine. Now, that's ridiculous, but at least you could formulate a potential biological scientific explanation of how somebody could get killed very close to a death and then come back from it because their healing internally is so great that it was able to repair those damages. Highly unlikely. I am not saying that's what happened, but at least you would have some sort of potentially scientific way that you could say that the resurrection of Jesus happened. But the problem is, then it's mundane. It's not anything special. It's just that's how his biology happened to be. So the resurrection of Jesus relies fully upon an unscientific assertion that God rose Jesus from the dead, that God used God's power, basically magic. I don't know what else to call it, because it's not explained how God does it. Does God rearrange the molecules inside Jesus' body? Does he repair them? How is it that God is doing this? Doesn't matter. Just God wills it into being that Jesus is alive again. That's not scientific. Therefore, the resurrection of Jesus could not be scientific evidence. Ontological argument, that's the one I was thinking of. Yeah, that one doesn't have any scientific evidence at all. I confused that one with the teleological argument earlier. That won't be in my edited video because I will have edited that out. So just pretend I didn't say that. The ontological argument, if I'm thinking correctly, is you can think about God, therefore God exists. Sorry, reality doesn't work that way. And also, that's not scientific. That's philosophical. So is his channel any good? You're talking about JMD there. I mean, I can't make that discretion for you. I mean, I'm sub to a bunch of channels that I am sub to just to watch what they do in readiness for nonsense like this. So, anyways, but the ontological argument is a philosophical argument, not an argument from science. There's no scientific evidence there. There could be no scientific evidence there. The ideas within, depending on which ontological argument, and I'm going to make sure that I know I'm talking about the right one now. Because if I'm not, then I just, let's see. Yes, I was right. The state of being or existing. Yes. Yes, I was right. Love it. I'm always right. You just trust myself. I wasn't right before when I wasn't right, but that doesn't count. So the arguments essentially are states of being or existing. And depending on which version and which flavor you use, they're going to have different logical fallacies. And there would be the end of it. You'd have to be skeptical of the conclusion. But you will not find any scientific anything in those arguments because they're philosophical arguments, completely philosophical, using no references to what science could discover about reality. So, what else? The reliability of the New Testament. um, I would dare say that that's not scientific. That would be historical methodologies used, and many have looked at that and addressed that and shown that it's not very reliable. What you have is a collection of written works over time And the system that they used, and this is not, well, I guess somebody might object, but the system that they had in place at the time was that they would copy the manuscript of the holy book, or what they thought was holy, or however you want to put that, and say, okay, I've copied what's already there. I've done that really rigorously. Now I'm going to burn the old copy. Why? Reasons, but I find that as a very bad practice, because then we don't have we don't have we can't check to make sure that they didn't screw it up or deliberately add or take away stuff. So, we have to rely upon that humans would never change anything. It's just the word of God. Why would we puny mortals that are supposedly full of sin ever mess with the word of God? Come on, we wouldn't do that. Well, of course they did. So even if it was reliable, it still would have problems in it, because you'd have to also explain the various contradictions, which there's plenty of. You could make it free of contradictions as well. So reliable in the sense that it reflects reality. Well, you're going to get to a problem there, because again, you're going to get back to the whole resurrection deal. Now, the earliest gospel has Jesus die, and that's the end of that story. So you could go with that one and argue that one from a scientific point of view, but that's usually not what apologetics does, because what's the point in not having a Christ that rises? That's just kind of dull and pointless. So the reliability of the New Testament is arguable from a historical point of view, but from a scientific point of view, you have nothing. You would have nothing there. You would have, I suppose you could have a scientific historical thing somehow, but I'm not sure how that would work. The quantum God, I have no idea what that argument is. If I had to guess, it would be quantum stuff. We don't understand it, therefore God. So again, you probably have some scientific assertions in there. I haven't looked at this particular argument, so I don't really know what it is in this case. But I've heard arguments that involve quantum physics that try to point to God. There's this movie. It's actually a recruiting movie, but it's called "What the Bleep Do We Know?" and everything in it is completely just insane. But they actually do talk about the double slit experiment with a very good animation, and they actually get that part right, and that's about it. That's like the only thing. But then they use that and go, well, see, observer effect. We looked at the thing and then it changed, so that means that you looking at stuff changes reality. Uh, no, that's not what that means. But many arguments about quantum physics, uh, and I just had done one recently where, what did I call that one? See, this will be much better when it's edited. But none of you will you're all commenting now in the chat, so you're using up all your comment momentum. So I probably won't see you guys and gals in the comments. Why do you comments? All right. What did I do? Oh, inspiring spirit, philosophy, science. That video. Uh, IP, inspiring philosophy. I made fun of the fact that he sounded like spirit science, which is a different channel. But basically, the cosmic consciousness is this idea that because of the double slit experiment, there would have to be an observer for the entire universe to observe things to make the field collapse or not collapse. So God has to be, I don't know, blinking at the universe for it to be a universe, I guess. And that proves there's a cosmic consciousness. Yeah, it's nonsense. So it's something about science that is distorted, not understood, or twisted into bad logic, and then that therefore equals God. So yeah, you would have scientific stuff in that argument, but it'd all be bunk. Now I don't know if Aronra could cover the quantum stuff, but he would, I dare say, recognize the BS when you showed it to him. So that one doesn't, although it contains scientific ideas, the scientific ideas are misunderstood and then misapplied to reality. So, no, that one doesn't have scientific evidence either. And then the cosmological argument. Oh, goody, goody gumdrops. The cosmological argument. This one is flawed logically and scientifically. So typically, that depends which version you have, but typically it's, phrased as everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, thus the universe had a cause. And you might say, well, where's God in that? Well, you have to add in God later in other arguments to get God. And then you have to add in even more arguments to get to a particular type of God. And hypothetically speaking, that's all well and fine, but the first argument's flawed. We don't know that everything is anything. We only know about the things that we know about. That should go without saying, but it has to be said. We can only talk about the things that we have observed. So the first premise that's stated there, everything that begins to exist has a cause, already is flawed because of the word everything. It'd have to be changed to as far as we have observed, things that begin to exist have a cause, or something like that. And then the wording is kind of odd too. Begin to exist. What does that mean? Because we've never observed anything begin to exist. What we've observed is things changing from one state into another at best. A baby just doesn't begin to exist. There's a process that leads up to that. So, you know, at what point, the cells coming together and, and all this big process, and I don't know how birth works right now and whatever, and all of that, and then you go, well, the baby has a cause, and the cause is the parents. Well, the cause is the parents to some extent, but it's also the biology is the cause, and I mean, there's multiple causes there. So it reduces all of that to a very simplistic idea that, well, we know that things that we've observed have other things that came before them. So wouldn't it make sense to then deduce that the universe has something that came before it? Well, it might seem very rational to do that, but the problem is logic gives way to science here because science studies how reality actually is, not how we think it ought to be. So, although you might say, well, that just seems really inductive, it is inductive reasoning. There's problems with that, but it's inductive reasoning. Well, that's not scientific. And the universe didn't really begin to exist in the way that they are probably meaning begin, but it depends on how the argument's phrased. Um, and saying that the universe has a cause might not, in and of itself, be warranted. It depends on what they mean by cause. So it just has multiple logical problems. And because it doesn't represent Big Bang cosmology quite correctly, it has scientific problems. And because of that, it doesn't have scientific evidence. So, no to that one. Then God, morality, and ethics. Well, morality and ethics are not scientific endeavors per se. Maybe we can make them scientific endeavors. That would be interesting. But for the most part, those are within the realm of philosophy. So you wouldn't have any scientific evidence there either. So JMD Apologetics 101. You didn't present anything that was scientific evidence on your screen. Moving on. Then Aaron says quite boldly that there, as far as he knows, that there's not been, and he didn't say as far as I know, but nonetheless, that there's not been any scientific evidence for God or supernatural things. As far as I know, he's correct on that. Now, I don't know that this is the case because, it might be out there and I'm simply unaware of it. And in the same way, Aaron could be wrong that there's something out there, but he isn't wrong in saying that he has not been presented that. Because if he had been presented that, and he's, he's a honest actor, which I have every reason to believe he is, then he would be proclaiming that truth, whatever that truth was. because skeptics tend to want whatever is true. If it happens to be that there's God, great. I will go around declaring that and explaining that and arguing for it, but I have to have the empirical evidence for it, or repeatable tests for it, or a valid and sound argument for it. And Aronra just needs scientific evidence for it, but he doesn't have that, and he's never been presented it thus far. And so the guy that's asking the question continues. He says, "Okay, so you haven't found any evidence that you're looking for." Then he goes on to ask about the word faith, and it has, name one scholar that's defined faith in the way that you're suggesting. That has absolutely nothing to do with anything at all. Not even a little bit. Okay, so let me deconstruct the question that he wanted to ask, and why it's flawed in every way that it could be flawed. And I shouldn't read chat while I'm doing this. Double slick. That's terrible. What's wrong with you, Mark? Uh, okay, so the guy asks, you've said that you haven't found evidence, but in regards to faith, you're unable to cite one scholar, one whoever that agrees that faith should be defined in this way. Okay, those are two different issues. Evidence is one issue. What Aronra's argument is about the word faith is a separate issue. So you have to disconnect those two. They're two separate questions there. Do you have evidence? You haven't seen it. Okay, great. Regarding the word faith, do you have evidence that the way that you're constructing faith is the actual way to construct faith? No. This is his argument. Aronra's argument is, this is how I've defined faith. My argument is that faith is without evidence. It does not matter if there is or is not a single solitary scholar out there that agrees with Aronra. And by the way, even if there was, that would be nothing more than an appeal to authority. So even if Aronra could list off several of them, what would it matter? It wouldn't change this guy's view of what faith is if that view didn't agree with his view, would it? See, we all look at words in different ways. We all have our own understanding of words. And yeah, you can debate what a word means, and it's interesting to some and boring to others. And I have my own ideas about that, and I see problems with dealing with natural language. But yeah, you can do that. So the argument, I don't really know Aaron's argument in full, because he doesn't outline that here. He doesn't really present a syllogism per se, but the argument seems to be something along the lines of, I'm saying that faith is without evidence. Nobody has given me evidence, so it seems that my statement is so far true. He's then saying, well, but where's the evidence that the word faith is what you said it is? He doesn't need that, because his argument is, whatever faith is or isn't, to him is this definition, and all you have to do is show him evidence, and then that resolves it. The whole what faith is or isn't is irrelevant to all of that. So that's why this question is fundamentally flawed. So then, of course, he continues with his loaded question. I don't know who's asking this question. There's a guy behind him in the Ron Paul shirt, which is just, I love that. That's hilarious. Come on, go back to 4chan. Come on. Keep it. No. Sorry. But anyways, bearded guy, shirt. How do I describe this guy? I don't know. Guy that asks loaded question continues to ask loaded question and says, well, maybe you're biased and you're not interested in discovering the truth. Oh, well, this is poisoning of the well, and of course a loaded question. You don't include those things when asking a question to somebody. Could it be that you're actually biased and not true and dishonest and a liar? What? What? I guess it could be, but but maybe your research is also biased, and so you didn't look in the right place. See, because you are secretly biased. You don't know that you're biased, but see, you couldn't even point out this one thing, so therefore you're biased. Not a very good argument. Not a very good question either. Logically flawed on several lines, as I explained somewhat here. The pursuit of truth is something that I think Aronra cares about deeply. I can't speak for the band. I'm not him. And he probably wouldn't ever grace my channel with his presence because I'm not that cool. But if he ever did, that would be amazing. Notice me, senpai. Then I'll believe there's a god if Aronra shows up on my channel. Oh, also I have to get $1 million. So Aronra showing up on my channel, and I also receive $1 million same day. Then I'll believe in God. Okay. And I'm not done. Okay. Anyways, but so no, not being able to cite somebody that agrees with the definition that you're providing. Aaron is providing his own definition. It doesn't have his definition of that word doesn't have to be supported by anything other than this is my definition of the word. Refute my definition of this word. Show me that I'm wrong. Show me that faith does have evidence. Not go, well, but you don't even, but faith doesn't mean that thing. Okay, great. Then show me the evidence. Well, but that's not what faith means. You didn't say a single person that agrees with you that that's what faith is. Great, show me the evidence. But that's not what faith is. Okay, what is faith then? What's faith? What is it? What is faith? What is faith? Answer that question then. Or you give me your definition of faith. But forget about that. Just give him the damn scientific evidence. If you think you have it, give it to him. But in the 20 years that he's been doing this, nobody has. Nobody has. So then on screen, JMD has very small appeal to ignorance shirt here. And I'll see if I can find that shirt myself or zoom it in when I do this video edited style. If you all want me to do that, I don't know. Maybe you're all okay with this. I don't know. Okay, he made it bigger. There we go. Let's see. Premise. Nobody has proved X is true. Conclusion, X is false. Okay, he got that. He supposedly got that shirt from a course introduction to logic by somebody. I'm gonna have to see if that's in there, because I mean, yeah, that is one way to outline the appeal to ignorance, but it's not a very good. I mean, it could be better. I'm just okay. Whatever. I'm being nitpicky on it, but okay. So nobody has given Aronra evidence. That's true, as far as I know. So that's the end of that. There isn't. He's not. I mean, it's well. Therefore, there isn't evidence. Would be the appeal to ignorance to some degree. Now, he could be right if I analyze. If I take my time to analyze this, in the moment that Aronra is indeed making this argument fallacy. But it could still also be true that nobody has given Aronra evidence, independent of that. Yeah, okay, so Aronra says he hasn't given me evidence, you haven't given me evidence, nobody can, it's not out there. So that is a bit superlative. That's a little bit above, uh, and I can actually agree that it is to some degree an appeal to ignorance, uh, in the way that it was phrased. But this can be made into a syllogism that isn't broken. But yeah, fine. So Aaron Ra has one logical fallacy. So does that mean you have to be skeptical of Aaron Ra's position? Well, what's his position? His position is that he has not had evidence given to him. That's his position. And because he hasn't had evidence given to him, therefore he concludes that there isn't evidence. That seems to follow. So all you have to do is give him evidence and then show that he maintains that there is no evidence, and then you'll win. But nobody's done that. So it seems that Aaron Ra is right to some degree. And then he complains that somebody's triggered. No, he's got some righteous anger. I don't know, maybe he's had a few drinks or something. Then he plays Adam Sandler's clip at the end. It's cute and it's kind of overdone. Um, and then the guy complains that his question wasn't really answered. So there you all have it. That's my live analysis of that. Um, I haven't been getting. I don't know if I should make another hangout or if I should do it in this one. Forget. I threw out a debate challenge to JMD on Twitter that I'll debate him on there being no scientific evidence for his particular version of God. And I'll lose the debate if and only if he presents me with any scientific evidence of his particular God. But if his particular God is supernatural, he can't possibly do that. Thus, he can't possibly win that debate. So he'll decline that debate challenge for those reasons, as he should, unless he actually does have evidence. He might, I doubt it, but I'm ready to accept that evidence when you present it. The thing is, there wouldn't be the sort of atheist that we have if there was evidence for any God. But there isn't. So we do have atheism. God's so well hidden that it might as well not exist. But also, God reveals itself in a certain special way that if you're looking just right, then you'll see God. Well, why is God hidden? Well, free will. So your argument can prove God exists. Yes. Well, then my free will is negated. It's a paradox. But apologetics isn't about convincing the skeptic. It's about reinforcing the belief that the person already holds. It's about encouraging those with a similar belief and making them feel like they're intellectually fulfilled. That faith is based on evidence. It isn't, but if you want to show that that's wrong, you got to show that it's wrong. You don't have anything that's shown that wrong so far. So forget about what your argument is. Just give me the damn evidence. I've been asking for a long time. No one's done it. And it's not my burden to bear. I'm not the one making a claim that there's evidence for this. And by evidence, scientific evidence in this case. But I don't know what you got. I don't think you have anything. I think you have bad arguments. That's all I've ever seen. You tiger. So to some degree, when I actually analyze this, and you guys, gals, and robots, you tell me if you want me to actually do this as a proper analysis. I might do it anyways, but I'd like your feedback So if you're not in chat now, leave that as a comment. Yes, I want you to do this. No, I don't. And if you say nothing, then I don't know. And I'll just be like, whatever. I was going to complain about that people aren't commenting on my videos lately. And I was like, nah, I shouldn't do that. But I'm doing it now anyways. So comment on my videos. I mean, they need your love. It's not me. It's not me. It's the video. Think about the videos. They need your love and attention. Not me. I don't no, I need it too. Anyway, so the question of what faith is one that to some degree is answered by whoever is using that word. So Skid Row Trash has his version of faith. I have my version of faith, and Zip person might have their version of what faith is, and somebody else might have. Okay, so we would have to explain to each other what we mean by that. What do we mean when we use this word? Now we don't have to agree with each other that that is the quote unquote way to use that word, but we should understand each other. And we might want to label it if we're all going to use slightly different definitions, like you get faith number one, I get faith number two, whatever. And then we explore that. Now, I already have done this in my past video that I just did, where I'm responding to the idea that faith has never the idea that was first presented in this series that led up to this particular video was that there's no such thing as faith without evidence. Of course, there is. There's all sorts of faith without evidence. But it depends upon what the guy that made the video's idea of what faith is. My argument is no, faith is a belief without evidence based on what I'm presuming you mean by faith, which could be wrong. But so far, Craig hasn't corrected me on that. He is quite upset with me and is suggesting that I've missed his point or that I'm misrepresenting him or something of that nature. You've had an experience. The experience is evidence of the experience, and that's it. It's not evidence of anything else. So you might believe that the experience is from aliens or God or whatever, and it might be. But unless you can show that it is, that would require scientific testing of some sort, then you don't have a fact, you have a belief. That's it. So that's fine. Just admit that and you're good to go. Now that doesn't make it false, by the way. Having a faith in something doesn't automatically rule that thing out as not existing. Like I have faith that my light is on. It is on. Okay. But you guys can't tell because you're not I don't have somebody has to send me a webcam. That's what this boils down to. Just me begging for a webcam. That's what this whole hangout was about. Sorry, I disappointed you. But now this is I'm done with JMD, and I guess I'll read chat to see if anything said things I need to respond to Skid Row. Hey, our dealer, yeah, that's great. Michael Fieldsar, I'm not sure who Michael is in the debate. Who was Aronra debating? Eric. Oh, Eric is the name of the guy asking the question, I guess. I'm guessing that the guy that you mentioned is the guy that he was debating. Oh well. Let's see. Wild Heart said I rock. She rocks too. Mania totally forgot about Jandy. Which I could too, man. Mark said a funny joke. Let's see. 900 plus year old people and Dragon concludes that the Bible can't be used as evidence of anything supernatural. Well, now, come on. If there was a 900-year-old person in Dragons, that would be at least a decent start that there might be something supernatural. But if there was a 900-year-old person, we could study that person and figure out how they're 900 years old. And if there was dragons, we could study them and figure out how they work. And this kind of goes back to, I've had other videos where I've talked about the problem of the word supernatural, that if an event happens and you don't know what causes the event, and you don't have any way to test the event, then you just don't know. You saw something cool happen, and maybe you recorded it, but that's it. You can't declare that event is due to anything because you don't know. The invisible dragon in my garage is polka dotted, unlike other claims of even colored dragons in other inferior garages. Yes, that is a very much a classic. It's Russell's teapot. The proof lies in the realm of the one that forwards that. Tiger Dragon says that they wanted to ironically say, God bless you, you're doing God's work by helping stimulate minds and provoking thoughts. Well, I appreciate the sentiment. I don't know what God is to you. I mean, you can, if you want to tell me what God is, you can do that in comment, the chat, email me what you think God is. I don't know. But I would say that whatever God is or isn't, if it exists, it would have to exist within reality. And therefore, I would think there'd be some evidence of it, not things that just point to it or suggest or hint at it. But it's just really baffling why it would be hiding from us. Why wouldn't it be like, hey, everybody, here I am? You ever see Rick and Morty with the giant heads? And they go, show me what you've got. Why can't God just be like a giant floating hand and be like, hey, guys, I'm God. Here's how this works. And it would know what we would need for evidence to convince us that it's God. Or it could just make us believe, if it's God, it can change our minds that way. Is that it? Am I at the end of the thing? Yeah, that's it. Okay, so I'm at the end of chat. I'm at the end of this. I'm at the end of my rope. Please, for the love of humanity, check out my other stuff and comment on my videos if you have not yet done so. I live on your feedback, good, bad, and other. It really encourages me to continue to do what I do. I don't do Patreon. I don't ask for money. I only did that once for a time when I actually really needed money. So I hate to say like, comment, subscribe. I don't care if you like the video or subscribe, although subscribing probably would be good because my numbers need to go higher. But the comment part is very important to me. And so if please do that. So yeah, that's that. Anyways, JMD Apologetics is wrong, and let me know if you want like an actual video where I do this not live. But if nobody comments, I won't. Nobody in chat saying anything. So I think everyone in chat exploded. Must be due to aliens. I used that joke in my previous video. Okay, I think I'm done now. I'm gonna like my own video because that's a thing you do when you're a YouTube person. You like your own video. And let's see. Meow. Lobsters exist. We can all agree on that, maybe. Oh, here we go. It's a comment. William says every time he gets to a live chat, everyone leaves. Nobody can smell you through the internet, so I don't think that the horse's stall is being cleaned or not cleaned affects it. But yeah, that's all I got. Time to do the fin, I guess. Hey, William or anyone else, anybody that wants, you're always free to email me, deconvertedman1@gmail.com. One, the number one, not ONE. It's deconvertedman1@gmail.com. It's on my about page as well. You click on about, and then you click the thing that verifies you're not a robot, and then you see the email address. So you can email me. We can set up a time to talk. We can talk about whatever. Probably logic. That's my thing. What is this? Frustrated atheist asked. You just missed it. Is what this is. I can't win. It's my life. This is how things work. Have a good one. Skid Row's like, yeah, okay, whatever. He knows I'm wrapping up, so he's like, I'm ready. I'll dial the fin thing before anyone else can do the fin thing, because some of you know that I do the fin thing, and you preemptively fin me. Only I get to fin. For the rest of you who don't know what the hell that's about, that's okay. What can I just got here. Do it again. Oh God. Just for frustrated atheists. Let me start from scratch. It all started about 13 billion years ago, and that's too far back. Okay, so Teal'c's version. JMD Apologetics posts a thing where Aronra rants when asked the loaded, malformed poisoning of the well question by this guy, apparently named Eric Hernandez, who JMD Apologetics still didn't get his answer to, even though he does get an answer. Aronra complains that there's no evidence been presented for the Christian God with, and by evidence he means scientific evidence. This is then cited as being a potential appeal to ignorance, which, depending on how it's framed, could be that fallacy. I have to actually analyze it more in depth, but even if it is, the fact of the matter is Aronra has not been presented with scientific evidence. So that point still stands, and why don't we just have the scientific evidence of the Christian God be presented rather than complaining about what the word faith is or isn't by any given scholar? That question remains unanswered. Aronra still doesn't have scientific evidence of God. JMD didn't offer any scientific evidence of God. We also didn't have any repeatable tests offered or any valid and sound argument offered either. And so unless and until we do, we must be skeptical of the conclusion. Give me, I better get so many cookies for that frustrated. I better be on your channel and like, you say you love me, and I said Finn already.